This is the Atrim 18B longsword / competition cutter. Whoop. Just give you a quick look at it right there. Super beautiful. Originally, when I had the sword, these fittings were all black. All in there. You can kind of see a little bit of that blackened color still there, which I left. But I went ahead and polished all that out because I really like that bright, shiny metal color. High carbon steel. Whoop. Kind of see that nice reflection right there. It comes after a bit more of a heavy polishing on that. Cross section is a diamond cross section. Whoop. That is somewhat lenticular right here at the guard. Doesn't have a super refined diamond in there. Show you down the blade. Whoop. Super low or flattened diamond section there. The idea is to make the sword super non-resistive in the cut, which in my experience is true. Super really good cutting sword. Couple of things that I've noticed as I've looked at this guy. As we look down the blade, whoop, right here, you see we do have small gaps in between the blade and the guard, which is not a huge deal. Not very deep at all. Fairly simple grip, nice and comfortable. I typically like mine to be a little bit wider, a little bit more rounded. So it tends to be fairly blocky. It is kind of small. So if you have yourself in a nice, good handshake grip, you pull your hand all the way around, you can see your thumb goes quite far past that from me. I have big hands though, so not uncommon. There's two fists and handshake grip, pretty much the exact right size for me, right there. This guy is not super long. If I stick him here on the floor while I'm sitting, it comes up to about right there. I'm standing up, about right there. It's a fairly short long sword. That's what you want with a good cutting sword, which I find this one to be an exceptional cutting sword. Angus Trim is known as a super high-end maker who makes some of the best cutting swords in the world. That's what he's kind of known for. A couple of criticisms that I've heard about Angus Trim, swords in particular, is first, they're not based on any historical example. So these ones are primarily meant to be really good tatami cutting swords, which I find to be the case. Those bad boys. Angus Trim works in collaboration with Sonny at Valiant Armory. They make a sword of this blade profile called the Talaro, which has made super popular rounds not too long ago. Very good sword. Same blade profile, slightly different grip, and it comes with a scabbard, so very stylish. This one I think I paid around $1,000 for. That one you're going to pay with all of the upgrades, anywhere between $1,300 to $1,600 depending on where you get them from. Direct at events, I've seen it go for as low as $12 or $13. So super awesome, really high-end cutting sword, and would do well in anybody's collection. Center of percussion, go ahead and hit it. Tends to be right about there, which, if you notice, is super long up for this type of a sword. So Angus Trim has gotten really scientific with cutting swords, moving things around a lot in the cutting nodes, so to make it a lot better of a cutter. And this one cuts super far from the hand. So if I hit this guy again, you can see we have one node right about there at the guard and another node right about there at center of percussion. So the most vibration of the sword is going to happen up towards the tip, which is fairly small, so there's not going to be a whole ton, and then down over in here where it's super beefy, where it's not going to move a whole heck of a lot. It is a super thin blade, so that's something that you really want to avoid with thin bladed swords, is they tend to wobble a lot. This one, not so much. So hit it, hold still, boop. See, it's not a super flexible sword, which is great. For most cutters, you want them to be stiff, broad at the base, taper quickly around the center of percussion, and end at a nice stabby point. A lot of cutting feats involve thrusting this point into the target, quickly withdrawing it, cutting again. I see no problem with this cross-section of sword doing things similar, and that's really what it's built for. Other than that, it is a super, super light sword. So I think mine clocked in at about 2.5 pounds out of the box. I've removed a little bit of weight from it because when it came, it was sharp, but it wasn't sharp enough that I couldn't run my fingers up and down the blade and be okay. This one, I've sharpened quite significantly, and it's paper cutting or even shaving sharp now. After a good shave on this guy, it is a significantly better cutter. I'll go ahead and roll some footage here of me cutting with this sword before I sharpened it, and then some cutting with my sword after I've sharpened it. So as you can see, it makes a super big difference cutting target-wise, how sharp your sword is getting. But even though this sword wasn't immaculately sharp when I got it, it did an amazing job cutting, which is really what you want, especially when you're cutting some of those heavier targets like tatami, or cutting paper or cardboard, stuff like that in the backyard. You really, really need a sword that's going to hold up under pressure, one that's not going to lose its edge super quick, especially when you don't have a ton of tools like I do. Makes it really, really hard to maintain the edge of your sword. If I did have one complaint, this sword, you may not be able to see it super well, but there's a tiny, tiny rust spot right there. That was because I put a fingerprint on it last night without even thinking about it, and it rusted super quickly. That could be due to where I stored it, but I don't think so. So that would be something to be aware of, is these high carbon steel blades tend to rust super quickly, which I guess is one advantage of stainless steel. Would you make a sword out of stainless steel? Absolutely not. You'd probably shatter. You can see a lot of videos of people with, mall katanas.
And the nice thing about these practice katanas, oh, that hurt.
The mall ninjas doing their bullshido, as it is known, shattering on impact with any kind of hard target. But this sword will rust. So super, super important to keep this guy oiled. Fairly easy to sharpen back up, not too crazy. Fairly simple guard, fairly simple pommel. It is peened on the end, as I believe all cutting swords should be. Has a cool peen block right there. Everything's totally solid. You can hit it, nothing moves. You can flick it, rings like a bell. Kind of take it, you can hear it. That's a really super good test to see if everything is kind of built very solidly in a sword. If you're considering on buying a sword, if you go to an event or you go into a shop and you hit it and it doesn't make that sound, that's a pretty good idea that it's not built super well, or it might be made out of stainless or something gross that you definitely don't want to touch.
Weird, gross, ew!
So yeah, super good cutting sword. Really, really happy with my purchase. Angus Trim is really cool to work with. Really cool guy. Lots of good information about how to make a good cutting sword. Other than that, nothing more to say.